Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Christ consciousness. Now I want to talk about learning and how you turn learning into finding the facts. And of course, basically that's what you're trying to do with learning. When you learn something, you're trying to find the facts. Even if it's a practical way of doing something, you want to find the facts of how to do it. In general, you're looking at other concepts. And one of the big problems is that traditional learning at all levels is basically stating what is history, not fact. And they discourage you from thinking for yourself. What is the history of it? Now, I've had the displeasure right now, and what triggered all this was reading the books of Michael Aquino, the pseudo-intellectual head of the Temple of Set, and I'm working through his second book. His first book was tortuous. This one is, I don't know if I'm going to make it through his books because they're the worst writing possible. I remember reading his books on the Church of Satan, where he gave his history, and it's the same thing, just like everything he writes. It's the same brainwashed nonsense that academia loves so well. And the problem with this is that it achieves absolutely nothing, because what it does is regurgitate the same old information over and over again, kind of like life, with this constant reincarnation cycle you go through, that you die, go up to this cycle, you're spun back in again, and it never really ends. And this, of course, is causing what we have in society, which is a bunch of brainwashed stooges that keep repeating and regurgitating old information all the time. Now, as a very dramatic dyslexic, my mind automatically turns everything backwards. And that's why we've talked about backward thinking to find truth, is that anytime you get something coming at you, you say the opposite. And this works quite well. And then it may not be the quite opposite, but it's turned the picture around. You're not taking the propaganda in. You're not believing what's being told you. You're actually canceling it out by saying the opposite. This then allows you to find the truth. Because the truth isn't what's been told you. The truth is probably not the opposite. Could be. Happened recently with the new situation happened with this war. The bottom line is that you have to spin things around. So by doing reverse thinking, you are actually able to find truth. And of course, that's what you're looking for. So what does Dumbadamia tell you to do? Now, we'll get into that as well. But how do you learn and find truth? Well, it's not difficult. Now, what you do when you're trying to learn something, and you look at all these books written and so forth, what are they? I mean, this latest book that I'm reading by this guy, all he does is reference other people. He gives you an entire thing, goes ad nauseum into quoting other people. Well, Paracelsus said, Plato's dialogues, Kant's farting, and it goes on and on with all this stuff. So what he's saying and telling me is he doesn't have an original thought, and he's going by other people's thoughts and taking them as profound. And of course, this is what Dumbadamia does. They take bogus information, similar to Einstein's theories, etc., which are interesting, but they're bogus. They don't work. It's been proven it's all nonsense. But what it's done is it forces you to read it, regurgitate it, and believe it. And of course, that's what we have. And this goes in every single area of research and study. It all goes back to the same thing. I mean, people who want to constantly read religious documents, the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, whatever it is, well, let's read that again. Well, hasn't been read trillions of times? And why do we need to know that? Because it's really not what it says there. It's what ultimately is interpreted through your mind in modern society by taking what you know now and blending it in. Now, this is where we always go back to the synergistic understanding of life. Now, synergism is when you take all the pieces of a puzzle and you put it together. And what happens when you put the pieces of a puzzle together? You've just put the puzzle together, meaning you found truth. So that's what synergy is. And of course, that's what everybody has to do. They have to get information, take out of that information what is valuable and what has value of today, discard the garbage, and then put all these pieces together into a new, higher thought based on what we know today. So what we know today is more than we knew yesterday, and there is a truth to the fact that it's better and obviously logical. Or we wouldn't know it today. We wouldn't have different thoughts. We would just have the words on a book, which is what people. But the bottom line is those words in those books are constantly being interpreted by each individual that reads them. And this is another problem. But they are adapting it to what they believe in their life. Now, the problem with that is you have to be careful if you're not adapting things for your personal convenience. But in general, what you're trying to do is gather all the information. You could kind of see this as an investigation, some sort of mystery or crime show where you're getting all the facts together. Who did it? And you have all these clues and you're putting together to come up with what? The truth of who did it. And life is like that, and that's how all process of learning should be. We're putting pieces together, we synergize these pieces to find out who did it or what the truth is. Now, that's not what they tell you to do, though. They tell you that they want, and of course, this is what all writing of papers and everything else in Dummadamia does. Well, what's your bibliography? Where did you steal the information from? Who are you going to copy and regurgitate and say it's true and put it in this paper? Because we don't want your opinion. Well, that, of course, makes no sense whatsoever. It's your modern synergistic opinion that has value because you're balancing your opinions and your knowledge of your entire life, and then you're reading other people who give you, kind of stimulate you, give you better ideas of how to do something different, but not doggishly follow something. Slavishly follow something to the letter of what they said. No, you're taking a way of doing something in the past that may have some validity and saying, well, yeah, we have tools for that now. So we can do it better, more efficient, etc. But they don't want you to do that. They want you to slavishly follow what they said in the past, and they want you to state that instead of coming to your own educated conclusion. And that's, of course, what you've got to do. You've got to come to your own educated conclusion. So if you know something and been studying something, you will then read information and say, gee, this is interesting, this helps me. Or you can actually determine if it's garbage. And if you read many sources of information, you should be able to figure out what appears to be truth. But you're not going to get that from quoting this book. Well, this author said this author said that. Well, who cares what they said? Is it valid? And when you put the many opinions together, does it accumulate or synergistically come together as a higher, better path? Well, that's what you need to do. But that's not what they tell you to do in school. They want you to have a bibliography. Well, I got this information for all these people. Oh, you're very smart. You see, you got all this information from the masters. You know, I hate masters. I hate classical literature. I hate the opera. I hate ballet. And I hate pretty much all classical literature. Whether Shakespeare or Dickens and all those babbling boobs that are self-appointed and glorified philosophers, Kant, Nietzsche, etc. Well, you know, it's all kind of interesting, but it doesn't really. I mean, these people were around over 100 years ago, and their philosophical understandings and opinions are not very valid anymore. We have to adapt them to modern times, what we've learned and how we've analyzed their stuff. Not to mention they all come from some of the scummiest places on the planet, brought up in the most horrible educational systems like Einstein was. So the whole idea is that, you know, these are all clones. These are brainwashed fools. And we're supposed to believe. Or let's go back to the ancient Greeks. Yeah, let's go back 2,000 years and talk about Stoicism, Plato, Socrates. Well, the point is, while there is some wisdom there to be gained, it still has to be interpreted. And there's an awful lot wrong there as well. Of course, nobody points that out. They want to take what fits into their little puzzle easiest. But there's a lot of bad information there. And they had a lot of things wrong. Now, are they stimuli for higher and newer thought forms? That's correct. That's supposed to stimulate you so that you synergistically take what you know, combine with some of the old stuff, some of the new stuff, some of the future stuff, and put it together into a working, proper puzzle that is complete for this time. If you don't do that, if you go by what other people have said, you are really just regurgitating the same old philosophy. You're agreeing with the old philosophical or whatever it may be information you gained. Is that what the purpose of it? Well, who cares about that then? Just read the book and just believe it and that's it. Why do we need anything past that? And that's really where they push you. They push you into the fact that this is a fact. When really nothing is a fact in life. Nothing is known 100%. Everything completely changes. We go from science that was pretty primitive and knew nothing to science that is very materialistic. So everything is a physical nature. That's why they call it physics. But the physicists now understand that things are really not very physical. They're non-physical to a large extent. But they probably won't admit that. But they keep moving into that because they have to. Because they're finding out things are fields and energies. Well, is that physical? Well, not really. Those are the non-physical. But they think it's physical because some of these energy fields can be measured, and if it can be measured by some meter, it means that it is physical and real. Well, that's another jump as well. But without getting into the details of that, the whole idea is that you're supposed to come up what is ultimately true for you. When you learn something, particularly when it comes into the manifesting sciences, the occult sciences, you have to adapt all systems to what you need to do in life. So you have to figure out what your pluses and minuses are and integrate that into your life so that you can get the highest and best use from something. Now, there's always the standard way of doing things, but a master figures out how to get something to work for them in a very particular way. And it could be very uncommon way of doing things. So everybody learns the common way, but a master learns what works for him or her. That's what masters do. They figure out what little things they do, and generally those little things are what we call the tricks of the masters. You go to somebody and say, yeah, that's what they tell you how to do it. Now, this may be anything from hitting a baseball or driving a car, whatever it may be, but the master says, yeah, but here's the trick to it. Not the book learning of it. Yeah, everybody does this, but yeah, and it gets you a certain level of results, but the master figures out how to do the perfect technique. And this is also the perfect understanding and the synergistic reality of something, not the booklet. We have to also start our thinking with that everything we know is wrong. And it's true. Everything we know is wrong. You want to become a doctor and go to medical school? Well, most people die from everything. I mean, doctors really don't heal anybody. You give somebody a pill. The pill is for the treatment of the symptoms of that particular illness. So basically, it's learning to give people pills that somebody else invents and does the medical work on and say, this pill is good for this. And of course, there's huge dangers in that, and they don't work that well ultimately, and there's so many other problems. So when we look at these things, we have to understand what works for you. And wisdom ultimately is taking information and adapting it to what works in your life. It's also coming up with new thinking. The whole idea, if we slavishly follow everything that's been told to us, which literally it's frightening when you look back at the scientific discoveries and so forth we have of that, how long ago it was. We've had the solution for energy for 150 years. Hydrogen, usable hydrogen fuel cells were invented 150 years ago almost. 120, 150, whatever it is. Oh, we've had these. Yet even when something is sitting there, it's rejected because of common opinion. What your training institutions have told you that this isn't viable, and that's what the research says. Or maybe there just isn't any research or books written on hydrogen power. No, we're ignoring all that. We're jumping ahead to electrical cars. Yeah, yes, Pedro. Elon Musk is great. The guy who invented a flamethrower. Yeah, that's the kind of things, man. So the whole idea is then people slavishly follow people. And this goes with everything. People slavishly follow whatever's popular, whatever's in, whatever religion's around. So because of the fact that it's insinuated that these people and belief systems are valuable because other people follow it. It's just like mouthing the same information over and over again, you not coming to your own conclusion. Following a religion is following someone else's beliefs. Being spiritual is following your own. But spiritual thinking is, of course, frowned upon as horrible. So you're supposed to follow what other people tell you to do. And that is how they teach you. Follow what's in the old book. This guy knows. That's why he's still around. You're going to then regurgitate that, and you're going to tell us that you regurgitated it by listing it in your bibliography. Now, the way you reach fact is by getting this information and coming to your own personal conclusion, period. What does that mean to you? What is the bigger picture here? Do you think inventors slavishly follow the books that are written on inventions in general? How would you have a new invention if you did the same thing that the other guy did? So you look up in the patent office how to make a cup and you make the same cup. Is that a new invention? Certainly isn't. Well, you have to go past that. So it means this is how cups are made. Well, I've got a better idea. And I'm going to make a cup, but I'm going to do this to it. Well, what are you talking about? Look at the patent. The patent says this is how it's made. You make it that way. You verify it. You say it's good. That's exactly how they mess with you. And, of course, that's how they create clonish people. It's all about following the same old people to the same old conclusions, which generally are negative, bad, and even destructive, life-threatening to many times, and ignoring almost genocidal and sort of things. Like the fact is we have such free energy, but we're genocidally following, toxifying our planet because there's so much oil on it. So all of this is how you learn. So that's how you learn. Get information, synergistically put it together to find truth, which should be a unique or different path based on some known foundations to achieve the optimum for you. So I hope everybody got that. That's the key to everything. But as you can see how that's, when you read certain writers and they keep quoting other people, I don't care what Plato said. I don't care what Socrates said. I don't care what all these other people said. Schopenhauer, whoever the hell I don't care what they have to say. Referencing that as a pseudo-intellectual way of telling me you don't have any of your own thoughts. Using large or difficult to understand words is another pseudo way of confusing people. The bottom line, if you have a concept, tell it to me in the most simplistic words you can and use your own words. Don't say, you understand the concepts in the Dialogues of Plato. No, and I could care less. I'm not going to read Plato. I got to read somebody who's 3,000 years ago. How does that pertain to my life today? Some philosophical nonsense? I'll get more philosophy out of a damn pop song, which some are fantastic that explain everything in life. And certainly Plato didn't do it 3,000 years ago. Who cares? You tell me what you believe, not what you're bouncing off of someone else's beliefs, which, by the way, I have to interpret. Yeah, I know what the dialogues are, and my interpretation is this. Oh, no, it's not. This is the interpretation. Well, it's confusion already because you haven't stated what you're trying to say. What you're stating is what somebody else stated, and using all these gobbledygook terms that come from these pseudo-intellectuals that produce absolutely nothing. Basically, they're all controlled slaves that do what the state tells them to, whether that's building toxic products and horrible weapons. Yes, pay me my money. I can't get fired. I have tenure. I mean, the kind of garbage we've set up for these professors who have done nothing for society in general is really shocking. But when someone wants to give you a quote of what something means based on the interpretation of someone else that you're supposed to know because you've read that because you're a literate person, you're an intellectual person, well, that's not the point of anything. Those are interpretative State what you believe is true from what you got from that bozo of 3,000 years ago, and what you apply that to modern times. What is today? What is now? What is going on at this particular minute? But they don't do that. They want to somehow justify their position and basically cause greater confusion by quoting other people that we're supposed to know what that meaning means. Well, I'm not sure anybody. Everything's open to interpretation. What is the interpretation of that? Or people who like to quote verses from Bible, etc. Well, yeah, you're taking that out of context. This statement was made. What is that? And you're placing it here now. Well, what does that mean? What is the interpretation of that? There are hundreds of Christian sects that believe totally different from each one of them. So which one is the correct one? The blood-drinking, flesh-eating Catholics? The Baptists who drink blood? I mean, let's go. What is this all about? So the whole idea is that your interpretations and then trying to go to a universal understanding of something, which is not universal in nature, by quoting some pseudo-intellectual person or some philosopher or some scientist, is the lowest form of writing there is. The lowest form of discussion as well. Let's not hear what somebody else's opinion that you agree with is. What is your opinion? What did you put together to find out the truth of this situation? Not quoting somebody else. Other people's information is there to assist and stimulate a higher understanding, which we would call accessing and knowing truth. It's just as simple as that. Hope this has gotten through to people and you understand. It's very critical to understand these concepts and understand how to think, how you find truth, and how you find your own personal truths based on your own personal life so that you can excel to the highest level and ultimately find out the frauds and lies of this society so you can ascend out of it. Until next time.